Welcome, my name is Kay Petrie and this is my yoga playground. Today we're going to have a video on focusing on our heart chakra. And some of the words that come about when we talk about the heart chakra are devotion, passion, unconditional love, compassion, tenderness, equilibrium, expansion, radiance, and connecting with others. So we're going to work today on opening and expanding our heart chakra, and we do that by going through some poses where we open up the heart, bring the shoulders back and down. So we're going to be having a lot of those today with a few back bends as well. So we're going to get started. If you feel like having props, there's two that I'll be using. One is a strap and two is a bolster for the end of the class today. So we'll start by finding a breath today to balance out our left and right, our energy. So if we're feeling blasé or have no energy, this breath will help us increase the energy. If we're feeling that we're very agitated or anxious, this breath is going to help bring our energy down. So it's a very balancing breath and it's called alternate nostril breathing. We'll start by using the thumb and the two fingers at the end of our hand, bringing the other two fingers in. Placing our thumb on the right nostril, taking a deep inhale in with the left, blocking the left, exhaling with the right. So follow along, inhaling with the right, blocking with the right, exhaling with the left. Inhaling with the left, blocking the nostril with the fingers, exhaling with the right. Let's flow through this for about 5 to 10 times, going at our own pace. And once we're done, bringing the hands to the knees, keeping the eyes closed if they were closed, and just taking 2 deep cleansing breaths, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the nose. Let's do that again one more time. And just connecting now with the energy in our body, taking notice of whether or not it has increased or decreased depending on where we were when we first started today's practice. Beginning today's practice in mountain pose, let's bring ourselves to all fours and then up into a forward fold. Reverse swan dive, let's come all the way up. Bringing hands to our heart center. Awesome. We'll start warming up our body with a flowing mountain, standing bone hip width apart. Grounding ourselves into the earth. Let's engage the calves, quads, inner thighs, tucking the pelvic floor under, engaging our abs, shoulders back and down. And on the inhale, bringing the arms up to the sky, palms together, exhaling, hands to our heart center, and then all the way down. Focusing on our heart today in today's practice. Focusing on whatever one of those words that I use that is more meaningful for you today for this practice. So passion, devotion, unconditional love, compassion, expansion, equilibrium, tenderness, radiance, connecting with others. Whichever ones of those words work for you for today's practice, let's take a focus on that. Perhaps set that as our intention. Sometimes we can be deficient in those areas in our lives, and other times we have too much of it in our lives so that it comes out in a negative way where we're being too needy perhaps. Today's practice will help bring all of that into balance. Let's do 2 more here. And coming back into mountain pose on the exhale. Let's take both arms coming into a chest expansion. Here we can choose to just pretend that we're holding on to a large beach ball. We can interlace the fingers, or if we're working towards interlacing the fingers, using our strap in both hands and working the hands towards each other. So whatever works for us for today. Bringing those shoulders back and down wherever we are, opening up our heart, letting the heart shine forward. Taking a few deep breaths here as we stand in our chest expansion pose. While we stand, pointing our knuckles towards where the wall would meet the floor. If we want to take this pose a little bit further, we can hinge from the hips, bring our ribs towards the thighs, point the knuckles up to where the wall meets the ceiling. Taking a few breaths here, choosing the pose that works best for us and our body wherever it's at today. Since we're not really warmed up yet, slight to deep bend in our knees, taking care of those hamstrings. Letting the light from our heart shine forward. If we've chosen to hinge forward or clasp, let's release the hands. And then if we've folded forward, reverse swan dive, coming all the way up. And hands back to our sides for a mountain pose. Moving into a standing cat-cow flow. Bringing our hands to our sides with the palms facing forward. I'll face the camera for you. Taking a few breaths here. Taking an inhale. On the exhale, let's round those shoulders forward and we'll tilt the hands in and round the back as if we were a hissing cat. Holding here for a few breaths. And on the inhale, let's bring the shoulders up, back and down, palms face forward, and let the heart shine up, and we can gaze up towards the ceiling. Still keeping that natural length in the spine and in the neck, not hyperextending in any way. And then let's flow a little bit with this. So on the exhale, we'll come into cat, standing cat. On the inhale, standing cow, opening up our hearts. Exhale, emptying the lungs as much as we can. Inhale, letting all that breath and energy into our body. Let's do that a few more times. Exhale for cat. Inhale for cow. And one more time. And on the next exhale, just coming back to our mountain pose, standing at the top of our mats. This time, if we do have a belt, let's grab onto it. We're going to do a standing belt stretch. So you can grab your belt, hold about at least shoulder width apart, and we'll lift the arms up to the sky, palms facing forward, and we can expand the stretch if we want. And let's let those shoulders come back and down. Opening up the heart, feeling the stretch in the shoulders. We can close the eyes if it's comfortable. Breathing in and exhaling, both through the nose if we can. A few more breaths. And one more. Bringing the belt along with you, bringing our hands down to our sides, letting go of the belt and bringing it to the floor. We can keep hanging onto the belt if we need it for our cow face pose. Again, working on expanding the heart open, stretching out our shoulders, taking the right hand, let's lift it up towards the sky, bring the elbow towards the head, and then let our hand and arm drop behind us in this fashion. Then taking our left hand, reaching behind us and working towards clasping those fingers together. If we need to, we grab a strap, we put the strap in the top hand, we grab onto the strap with the bottom hand, and then we start working those hands towards each other with the strap. So while we do this, the head is straight, we're gazing forward, elbow is pushed back and along our head, and we breathe as deeply as we can, bringing as much oxygen and air as we can into our lungs, filling the belly. A few more breaths. And releasing. Perhaps giving a quick chest expansion here. And then switching sides. Let's bring the left arm up towards the sky. And then let the top of the arm drop behind the head, taking the right arm behind us, clasping the fingers. We might notice from side to side that there's a difference in our ability to clasp the fingers or not. So maybe we need the strap on one side and we don't on the other, and that's perfectly okay. Taking some breaths here. Again, focusing our attention on the heart center and whatever we used as our intention for today, our focus word that we chose at the beginning of today's class. Two more breaths. On the next exhale, releasing, perhaps giving another chest expansion, stretching out those shoulders, opening up the heart. Releasing, coming back to mountain pose. Taking a few breaths. This time we're going to step back with our right foot, coming into a full lunge. Perfect. So we're pushing through the back heel. Our front knee is stacked over that ankle in line with our big toes. We can place the hands on the quad if we need to for balance. Let's push through the back heel, slight bend in the back knee, lifting up through the heart center. Now what we're going to do here is take our wings, our hands, bring them back, opening up our wingspan, shoulders back and down, shining the heart forward. Let's hold here for a few breaths. If we find that we're losing our balance, bringing our hands to our quad. And then just stepping up. Very good. And switching sides. So this time left hand back, or left leg back. Finding our alignment in whatever works best for us here. There's always the option to come into a kneeling lunge, but we're going to be adding another step in here in a second where we should probably be in our full lunge. So coming into the spread wing pose, heart open, lifting up through the heart and the spine, and then sinking down into the pose. And then stepping up again. This time we're going to flow through this pose, adding in a modified tree pose as we step up. So we can choose to come into our foot to ankle, foot to shin, or if we really want to, foot to our inner thigh. Okay? So this is how we're going to do it. Stepping back with the right, spreading our wings open, and then stepping up, coming into our tree pose, arms up towards the sky. We can touch fingertips if we want, or just coming to our regular tree. And then stepping back to our lunge, wings open. I'm going to do this about 5 to 10 times. So on the inhale, let's step up for our tree. And then back for our lunge, heart open. Stepping up for tree, stepping back for our lunge. A few more. Come on up, tree pose, coming back for our lunge. Woo! We can also use, if we want, in this a chair to help us with our balance. We could use the wall that's beside us if we need to. Let's do 2 more. And then come up. Very good. Hands to our heart center and to our side, and back to mountain pose. Taking a few breaths before we move on to the other side. This time stepping back with our left, coming into our full lunge, spreading our wings open just the way we did a while ago. Shoulders back and down, shining our heart forward. Stepping up, tree pose. Stepping back to our original position. So let's flow through this 5 to 10 times coming up. Tree pose. And we can try to do 1 breath per movement here. Perhaps inhaling as we come into our lunge, exhaling as we come into tree. Two more. And our last one. Good. Hands to our heart center, back to our mountain pose. Taking a few cleansing breaths. Even breathing out through the mouth if we need to release any heat. Let's take a deep inhale, arms up to the sky, moving into downward facing dog. Let's take a forward fold, hands to the ground, step back with one foot or the next, and the next. And let's walk those heels out, stretching out the back of the legs. Good. And then coming into a full downward dog, slight bend in the knees if we need to, or even a deep bend. Let's bring those ears right down our biceps, shoulders back and down. We work the heels towards the ground. They won't necessarily touch, that's okay. Working our tailbone up towards the sky. Dropping the knees on the next exhale. Preparing for a cat-cow on all fours. We can use fists for wrists if we have sensitive wrists, or just bringing the palm of the hand to the ground. Placing our knees underneath the hip bones, wrists and elbows underneath the shoulders. Let's take a deep inhale here as we reach out through the crown of the head. Exhaling for cat, tucking the tailbone under, back towards the sky, and then bringing the chin towards the chest. Inhale for cow, tailbone first. Let's soften that belly towards the earth, open up the heart, shoulders back and down, we gaze up. Taking care not to over-exaggerate the movement in any way. We're just doing some nice functional movements, warming up our spine for some back bends that we have coming up. Very good. Coming back to a neutral spine, preparing for an extended puppy pose. We'll keep our knees stacked under our hip bones and walking the hands out, bringing our forehead to the ground. Chances are we're feeling this stretch in our shoulders. Taking a few breaths here. Bowing our heart down towards the earth and just surrendering to whatever it is that we need to surrender to. Walking the hands back up, coming to all fours. And moving into thread the needle. Taking our right hand, let's lift it up towards the sky. And then reach under the left arm. Reaching under the left arm. And bringing the right shoulder to the ground. We can stay here, or if it's available to us, we can take the left arm and reach it up for a twist. Taking a few breaths here. And then we'll switch sides and do the same thing on the other side. One more breath. On the exhale, if we've lifted the top left hand, let's bring it down. Prop ourselves back up. Back to all fours. Taking this time the left hand, let's reach it up towards the sky and then thread the needle, reaching in between, dropping the left shoulder to the earth this time. Palm is facing up towards the sky And then we can, if we want, bring that right arm up towards the ceiling. Let's go for about 5 breaths here. And on our next exhale, let's bring the top hand down, bring ourselves back to all fours. Preparing for a gate flow. Facing the short edge of our mat, or the long edge of our mat, let's come into a kneeling side plank. Placing the right knee underneath the right hip bone, extending the left leg out, toes pointing forward, fingertips to the ground, left hip back, hips pushing forward, and then let's reach that left arm up towards the sky. For our kneeling side plank, shining our heart forward. On our inhale, coming up, taking the left hand behind the hamstring, and then reaching up to extend, and then over for a side lateral flexion here for gate pose. Holding here for a few breaths. And then we'll flow, coming into our side plank, and then into gate pose. Finding a sense of ease and balance and flow in this beautiful transition. Let's do a few more. And then bring the top hand to our hip, come back to kneeling, and switch sides. So extending the right leg out, toes pointing forward, coming into our side plank on this side. Now, pushing those hips forward, shining the heart forward. We can have fingertips to the ground, or fists to the ground, or full hand to the ground, our choice. Let's take a few breaths here. We have the ability or option to gaze up to the top hand, gaze just out in front of us, or down to the floor, whatever's most comfortable for our necks. On our next inhale, coming to gate, inhaling, coming up, extending up through the spine, and then slightly tilting over for a side lateral flexion for our gate pose. Taking a few breaths here. Again, we're still pushing the hips forward, pressing that foot into the mat, and then flowing, coming into our side plank on one breath, and then coming up for our gate. Flowing through this about 5 or 6 times. Enjoying the movement, enjoying the flow. And one more. Bring your top hand to our hip. Good, coming back to kneeling, facing the short edge of our mat this time, preparing for camel pose. In camel pose, keeping the knees in line with our hip bones, pushing the hips forward, engaging our quads. And we can begin by bringing hands to pockets with fingertips pointing down, working the shoulders back and down and elbows towards each other. And that might be where we're at today for our camel pose. Always pushing forward through the hips no matter where we are, and keeping the heart open. This gives us a slight back bend. If we want to come into full camel pose, reaching back with our hands to the heels. Again, still pushing forward through those hips, still keeping the heart open. We can gaze forward, or if it's comfortable, let the head drop back. Taking a few breaths here. Remembering to only go into the pose that works for us and our body. It can take time to get here. And then wherever we are, let's come back up. Push ourselves back into child's pose for a counter pose, giving a little rest to our lower backs. We can stack the fists, place the forehead on our fists, and gently rock our hips side to side. A few more breaths here. And working our way onto our bellies. First of all, for Sphinx pose, placing the elbows underneath the shoulders, and we're shoulder width apart, palms to the ground. Placing the pelvic floor to the ground. Our legs are about bone hip width apart. We just lift slightly and shine the heart forward for Sphinx pose. Just picture one of those Sphinx statues. And this is what we look like right now. It's a slight back bend. Now we can stay here, or we can take it a little bit further into Cobra pose, placing the hands just a little bit further back, pushing up, lifting up, keeping our pelvic floor to the ground, shining the heart forward for a much deeper back bend this time. We can hold, or if we want, we can flow through, coming down on the exhale, coming up for Cobra. Our choice. Taking care of our backs. If this is too hard on our lower backs, we can come into child's pose at any time. Wherever we are, let's come down, push back into child's pose. Few breaths here. Then walking the hands up, let's scooch those legs underneath us, coming to a seated position, preparing for bridge and a bridge flow. Grabbing behind one or both knees, letting ourselves rock down towards the ground. I'll just adjust my microphone here so I don't lose you. Bringing ourselves onto our backs, placing the ankles and heels underneath the knees. Knees are bone hip width apart. Hands to the ground. And finding that connection to the earth with our feet and our hands. The only two parts of our bodies really that have contact with the world all the time. Taking a few breaths. Always within this pose, keeping the neck long and on the ground. On our first inhale, lifting up through the hips, keeping the inner thighs working towards each other. Keeping our knees in line with those hip bones. Only coming up as far as is comfortable for us. Let's hold for a few breaths. In this pose, if we find that our knees are always opening up, we can take a block or a pillow and place it in between our inner thighs and squeeze onto the pillow or the block. Let's come back down on our exhale. And then we're going to flow. On the inhale, coming up for bridge. On the exhale, coming back down. Let's do this about 5 times. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. A few more. And last one. Taking both hands, reaching behind the knees from the outer part, bringing knees to chest. Gently rocking side to side if we need to or want to. And our next pose will be wheel pose. This is a more advanced pose. If you're not there in your practice yet, I really encourage you to either stay in our knees to chest pose, as we are right now, or return to a flowing bridge. For those where wheel pose is included in your practice, bring the soles of the feet to the ground. Bring the hands just a little bit wider than shoulder width apart behind us with fingertips pointing towards the feet. And then on our first inhale, coming up. And coming up as far as possible for us and our body. Taking a few breaths here. Shining our heart forward. Coming back down very gently. And wherever we are, whether we did wheel pose or continued with our bridge, at this point bringing knees to chest one more time. We're approaching the end of the class. If you have a bolster or some pillows, I encourage you to take the bolster and put it so that it runs along the long edge of the mat. If we want, we can take a blanket and place it at the end of it for our head. We're going to move into a restorative shavasana or restorative final relaxation where we let our heart shine open. Bringing our bum right up against the butt of the pillow, letting ourselves rest back. Bringing the head on the blanket if we have it. Good. Now we have options here. We can keep the legs extended. We can bring the soles of the feet to the ground, or we can come into a reclined butterfly, our choice. Bring the arms alongside of our body, palms facing up, closing the eyes, and finding rest. Bringing our attention back to that focus word that we chose at the beginning of today's class. The intention that we had for our practice today. Staying here as long as we need to. Taking this time just for you, letting yourself feel, and letting the true you shine through your heart. As I said, I invite you to stay here as long as you need to. I will end class by bringing my hands to my heart and recognizing you. Namaste. My name is Kay Petrie, and this is my yoga playground.